just so much work, you have no idea. Getting the word out, making, and then the anxiety about, is anybody going to show up? So thank you very much for doing it. They deserve a hand. So I'll start off because this is a Q&A, but I know like a lot of the normal questions that happen. So like I've developed this monologue. Let's see if it works. Generally, one of the most frequently asked questions is, how did you find yourself in Cafe Graditute? You don't look like the normal customer. And I was not. What happened was, one of the things we enjoy about and reflecting about the film is that each step of the way, the progression of the film had something to do with a kindness that was extended to another person. At the time, and the first one was my cousin Michelangelo. Yes, that's his real name. No, he was not a Ninja Turtle. And he was ill. And I went, there's a store in San Francisco that specializes in international titles. My cousin is from Sicily, and I wanted to get some Italian movies with subtitles, because dubbing don't make it. So I went to this store, and in this part of the city I normally didn't go to. And in the distance, I saw this sign that said Cafe Graditute. And I thought, wow, that's interesting, because in the 12-step world, which I'm a part of, one of the things we say in the 12-step world is, gratitude is a central virtue. And one of the things we say is a grateful heart will not drink, and things like that, or a grateful heart is less likely to create too much damage. So I got my films, and I strolled over to this place, and it was a dark and dreary February evening. There was a mist on the ground, there was a little fog in the air, a little chill, and the dreariness of the atmosphere was a direct reflection of my internal landscape. And as I approached this place, it was warmly lit, and not too many people there, and there was this young woman with two long pigtails that looked like Pocahontas. I thought, this place got to be safe, it's all right. So at the time I was nearly 300 pounds, very lonely, very depressed. I was diagnosed with hepatitis C. I was being treated with a form of chemotherapy for that. And I was just miserable and so lonely. I can't even describe to you how lonely, the excruciating loneliness I was feeling at the time, because the more I expanded, the more I receded and I isolated. I used to ring my own doorbell to hear what a visitor would sound like. I get to this place and I open the door and I'm met with all this fanfare. Hi, welcome, glad you're here, come on in. It's like, for me, that was like 18 years worth of greetings in 2 minutes. So I see Ryland and I said, I walked over to Ryland and I said, hey man, I had to have a cup of coffee in Cafe Graditute because I figured somebody here is in recovery. I thought somebody was being clever, I thought somebody here's in recovery. And he smiled and looked at me and said, well, we're all recovering from something, aren't we? and so I immediately knew he was not part of the 12-step world, and just figured that maybe he smoked a joint before going to work. And I looked around at these people, and they were really bright and shiny and comfortable in their skin. Everything that I wasn't at that moment. And there was something very appealing about that, because I felt that they were seeing me. When I was that big, I never felt seen. I felt like people were just staring at this exterior. At least that's what the story I had in my head. But these people were reaching me. So I started going there a lot. And not because of the food, I gotta tell you, because I thought vegan was a planet, I didn't. And when he told me there was a raw food vegan restaurant, I thought raw food. My first thought was, how do you cook that? So I kept going back because of the way I felt when I went into that atmosphere. And one day, and also, as I said, it wasn't because of the food. It's because I would sit there and order something to be there, but then I'd leave and have chicken and ribs, because at 300 pounds you need more than kale to stroll around, or so I thought. And so one day, Ryland comes to my table, and Ryland was this really exuberant guy. He was like a squirrel on meth. He's like just always like just so full of energy and exuberance. And so he comes and sits on my table and he says, "Hey, Frankie," he was always like 10 speeds ahead of me. He's like, "Hey, Frankie, you know that movie Super Size Me?" He said, "Yeah, that's where like that young healthy guy goes on like a 30-day fast food thing." He says, "Yeah." He says, "Well, we want to do something similar. We have this idea. We want to get a guy who's not well," which was a very generous assessment for my condition at the time, and we want to feed him raw food for X amount of time, and go to holistic health practitioners and do cleansings and colonics, which was going to be another learning curve, and we want to film it, and we want you to be the guy." I said, "Okay." I didn't think anything of it. I really didn't think anything of it. Now, at the time, I had the most, out of everybody, out of all the guys that were filming and me, I had the most film experience because I had seen the most movies. We didn't have a camera. We had no film experience. We had no money. We had this idea. And one of the cornerstones of the film, for me, that makes a difference for me is, and it inspires me, is that it's a testament to idealism. And I remember being very idealistic in the 60s. I remember we were going to change the world, and love was the answer, and music was so important, and generosity, and all these ideals that somehow got corrupted along the way. At least they did for me. And my idealism became all but dormant. It was dormant. And these guys sort of sparked it up. I began to remember my idealism. And so coincidentally, this guy that they knew, who was a professional filmmaker, got a job in Los Angeles. We were in San Francisco at the time. Got a job in Los Angeles, and now he needed the latest and the greatest of cameras. So he had what today would be the equivalent of a camera of, like, say, for example, an iPhone 3. And he wanted the iPhone 5 because he's going to Los Angeles. Well, to us, since we had a can and a string, the iPhone 3 was pretty damn good. And so here we now got a camera. Now we don't know how to use it, right? Because it's a real professional camera. We don't know how to use it. As a matter of fact, a lot of the filming was done improperly and it had to be redigitized. It was like a big mess. And so we started this idea of filming me. And it started poetically enough on Valentine's Day of 05, and that's when I signed that paper. And we began filming. And now they tried to approach this professionally. So, like, what they must have done was go to YouTube, how to make a documentary YouTube film, right? And so whatever they did. And I went to their apartment one time, and they had these, those big Post-its you get from the Office Depot, it's like a gigantic Post-it. And I can't do that. I can't do the Italian thing when I have a mic, right? I'm still learning. Bear with me, okay? So I went to their apartment. They had 3 of these posters on the wall. It was a storyboard. And it was their intention of the shoot that day. In statistics, there's a term called confounding variable. So these guys all had the keys to my apartment. And they had this intention of the day's shoot, the direction that they wanted to go. And then they came to my house and walked into my apartment and were confronted with the confounding variable. And it's exactly what it sounds like. And so initially the film was going to be about raw food and basically a Cafe Graditute infomercial is what it was going to be. But if that's for me, I'm very busy. And so that's how it started. But what happened was that this life that I was in, these relationships that were very close, in my close orbit, took precedence. And what happened was the film morphed from a film about raw food and Cafe Graditute into a love story of relationships and redemption, which is why we're all here on this planet, is to engage in relationships as deeply as possible, starting with ourselves, and then to express love and to receive love. That's why we're here. End of story. You can go and read really long books about why we're here. Just take it from me. That's why we're here. And so thank you. None of us knew this was happening at the time. None of us